Hey guys, get comfortable. Tonight, we're leaving behind the roar of modern cities and stepping into the crisp northern air of a Viking settlement. The year is somewhere around 950 CE. The sea is restless, smoke curls from turf-roof homes, and families huddle close by the fire. Let's drift there together to see what life truly felt like for those who call the North their home. Before we dive in, take a breath, get comfortable, and if you enjoy stories that bring the past to life, consider subscribing. I'd love to know where you're listening from tonight. Share it in the comments. Now, let the world outside fade for a while, and let's begin our quiet journey through history. If you close your eyes for a moment, you can almost hear it, the hush of the fjord at twilight. The water is still, smooth as glass, and above it, the sky shimmers. Green ribbons of light twist and sway, dancing slow and silent across the heavens. This is home, not the home of fierce raiders storming English shores, but the ones who stayed behind, the ones who chopped wood, mended nets, and kept the fires burning when the long ships sailed away. Because for every Viking with a sword, there were 10 others holding a hoe, a needle, or a crying baby. Down by the shore, you'd see smoke curling from turf-roof homes, little rectangles of warmth carved into the land. Their walls are made of stone and packed earth. The roofs are heavy with sod, thick enough to keep out winter's bite, and, well, most of the rain. Inside one of those houses lives a family, the kind history books forget. Let's call them Einar, Sigrid, and their 2 kids, Leif and Astrid. Einar is the father, a fisherman, farmer, and part-time storyteller. He's got arms like tree trunks and a laugh that could scare crows. Sigrid, his wife, runs the house like a chieftain commands a ship. Nothing escapes her. Not a drop stitch, not a half-swept floor, not even Einar sneaking an extra mug of mead. Inside, the air is thick with the smell of smoke, pine, and stew. There's always stew. Sometimes fish, sometimes lamb, sometimes something mysterious that's definitely edible, as Sigrid promises. The walls are lined with hanging tools, spears, axes, fishing lines, and wooden bowls. Light from the fire flickers across carved beams, the flames painting shadows that dance like the northern lights themselves. It's cozy, cramped. Yes, you'd bump your head on the rafters if you stood too fast. But it's warm, and in a land where the sun disappears for months at a time, warmth is everything. Outside, the cold bites hard. Winter in Norway isn't just a season, it's a lifestyle. The snow piles high against the doors, and the fjord freezes over until it looks like a sheet of marble. Leif, the son, is out there now, trying to break ice with a stick twice his size. Astrid, his little sister, watches from the doorway, chewing on a bit of dried fish and judging his technique. "You're doing it wrong," she says. Leif grunts. "You're doing nothing. I'm supervising." Einar steps out, bundled in furs, and shakes his head. "Both of you are doing nothing useful," he mutters, but his voice is warm with amusement. He looks out at the horizon, gray and endless, and sighs. "Good day for fishing," he says. Sigrid, from inside, shouts, "You said that yesterday. You came back with an empty net and a cold nose." Einar grins. "Then today can't be worse." See, that's the rhythm of life here. It's not grand battles or sagas sung in mead halls. It's small things, fixing nets, feeding goats, telling stories while the snow howls outside. And the northern lights, those shimmering bands in the sky, they're always there, like a quiet promise that even in the darkest night, there's beauty overhead. Some folks say the lights are the souls of fallen warriors, their armor flashing as they march across the heavens. Sigrid says it's just the gods showing off. Einar says it's good luck for fishing. Leif says it looks like the world's biggest campfire. Everyone's a philosopher here. When night falls, which, this far north, happens before you even finish your dinner, the family gathers by the hearth. Sigrid spins wool, her fingers moving so fast it's almost magic. Astrid hums quietly, braiding her doll's hair. Leif carves a bit of driftwood into the shape of a long ship. Einar tells stories. Always stories. He talks of Odin wandering the world in disguise, of trolls who live under mountains, of sea serpents that stretch from one horizon to the next. His voice is deep, rough like the sea, but soft at the edges, the kind of voice that makes even the coldest night feel a bit warmer. And when the kids finally drift asleep, Einar and Sigrid sit a while longer. They don't talk much. They don't need to. Just two people, watching the fire, listening to the wind whisper around the house. Outside, the aurora dances again. The green light slips through the cracks in the roof, painting soft patterns on the floor. Sigrid smiles faintly. The gods are restless tonight. Einar nods. Or drunk. She snorts. Then they'll fit right in. They laugh quietly. The sound swallowed by the night. That's the thing about Viking life. It wasn't all rage and glory. Most days were just ordinary. Hard, but ordinary. People worked until their backs ached, laughed when they could, and loved fiercely. Because up here, every bit of warmth mattered. And yet, in those ordinary days, there was something epic. Not in the way of kings or warriors, but in the quiet endurance of it all. A woman keeping her home alive through a 6-month winter. A man patching his roof with frozen fingers. A child carving a toy ship and dreaming of the sea. Those were the true sagas, the ones no skald ever sang. By midnight, the fjord lies silent again, only the creak of ice and the slow breathing of sleeping animals. Inside the little turf house, the fire burns low. Sigrid curls up beside Einar, both wrapped in heavy furs. Leif mumbles in his sleep, dreaming of catching the world's biggest fish. Astrid clutches her wooden doll, its hair tangled but loved. The lights ripple above them, slow, graceful, eternal. The same lights their ancestors saw, and their children would see after them. Somewhere, a rooster will crow long before the sun decides to rise. And when it does, life will begin again, wood to chop, nets to mend, stories to tell. Nothing grand, nothing glorious. Just another day under the northern lights. And maybe, just maybe, that's enough. If the fjord is the Vikings' face of the world, then the Longhouse, that's the heart that beats slow and steady through the long winters, warm, smoky, and alive with stories. From the outside, it doesn't look like much. A long, low building, half buried in snow, with a roof that sags under its own weight of turf and time. But step closer, and you'll see the marks of care, a fresh patch of moss here, a neatly stacked pile of wood there. Even the smoke that curls from the roof vent seems to move with purpose, carrying the scent of pine, stew, and a dozen quiet lives. The walls are built from timber logs, split and joined with patience. No fancy marble, no grand carvings, just good, honest with that creaks when the wind howls. The kind of sound that tells you, yes, the world is cold out there, but not in here. Step through the doorway. Duck your head, or you'll learn the hard way, and you enter a world that smells like everything at once. Smoke, wool, leather, dried fish, a bit of sweat, too, the kind that comes from hard work, not neglect, and warmth, that deep, bone-melting warmth that makes your breath slow down and your shoulders drop. The air is thick with it, thanks to the long fire pit running down the center of the room. The flames dance lazily, licking at blackened stones, sending smoke upward to the roof smoke hole. Some of it finds its way out. Most of it doesn't. The result? A constant haze, soft, gray, and comforting, that clings to everything. Your clothes, your hair, your memories. Around the fire, life happens. Always a fire. It's where meals are cooked, stories are told, tools are mended, and people gather when the world outside turns to ice. At one end of the hall, Einar sits sharpening his axe, slow and steady, the sound of stone on steel echoing like a heartbeat. Across from him, Sigrid tends a stew pot, a bubbling, mysterious mix of barley, dried meat, and whatever she managed to trade for last moon. The smell alone could raise the dead, or at least make Leif and Astrid hover a little too close for her liking. "Back away," she warns, waving her spoon like a weapon. "But I'm starving," Leif groans. You said that an hour ago. I was starving then, too. Astrid giggles, covering her mouth. Einar grins without looking up. Let him have a taste, woman. He's growing. He's growing greedy, Sigrid fires back. And just like that, the Longhouse fills with warmth that has nothing to do with fire. If you could listen close, really close, you'd hear a symphony of tiny sounds. The hiss of sap in the logs, the creak of wood as the roof shifts against the wind, the soft thud of boots as someone moves past a door, a cow lowing in the side stall where the animals sleep. Yes, the animals are here too. In the far end of the Longhouse, behind a wooden partition, the goats, cows, and sometimes even pigs stay through the winter. It's not strange. In fact, it's practical. They keep the place warm, and the family keeps them safe. Sometimes, in the quietest hours, you can hear them breathing, slow, heavy, and oddly comforting. It's the sound of life refusing to give up, no matter how cold the world gets. The Longhouse isn't just a home. It's a timeline. 3 generations might live under the same roof. The elders, who know every crack in the wall. The parents, who keep it all running. And the children, who dream of sailing away, but still sleep best near the hearth. Einar's mother, old Brynhild, sits near the fire, spinning wool. Her fingers move in a rhythm older than words. Every thread she spins feels like a whisper of time, connecting her to the women before her and the ones who'll come after. She hums a tune that no one quite remembers the words to, but everyone knows. It fills the room like smoke, slowly, softly, beautifully. If you looked up, you'd see the rafters lined with hanging treasures, drying herbs, smoked fish, strips of meat, and the occasional unlucky duck. Every inch of space is used. Nothing wasted. Even the walls tell stories, etched with runes, faded paint, and the marks of small hands that couldn't resist touching fresh clay. Astrid points up at one of the hanging fish. That one's smiling, she says. Sigrid sighs. That's because it knows you're not eating it tonight. Astrid frowns. I wasn't going to. Leif whispers. She was totally going to. Einar chuckles. Peace, warriors. The fish will meet its fate soon enough. And just like that, the whole room laughs. The fire crackles louder, as if it approves. You see, a Longhouse wasn't just shelter. It was the center of everything. Here, people were born. Here, they fell in love. Here, they argued, dreamed, wept, and died. Every story, every scar, every secret. It all stayed within these wooden walls. And when the storms came, when the snow fell thick and the fjord froze silent, it was the Longhouse that held them all together. It was, quite literally, the warmth of a world that refused to freeze. Later that night, when the fire burns low and the last embers glow red, everyone settles into their corners. Einar stretches out on a pile of furs. Sigrid curls beside him, and the children nestle close under thick wool blankets. The animals rustle softly behind the partition. Brynhild's spinning wheel slows, then stops. The wind sighs through the smoke hole, like a tired god finally closing its eyes. And for a moment, everything is still. You could almost hear the snowflakes landing on the roof. In the dark, Leif whispers, Papa, do you think the god can see us? Einar opens one eye, half asleep. Only if you don't sleep soon. Why? Because they get bored watching kids who don't dream. Leif chuckles softly and drifts off, the way only children can, as if tomorrow is just another adventure waiting by the fire. Outside, the aurora glows again. Faint this time, pale green fingers stretching across the sky. It touches the Longhouse roof, slipping to the smoke hole, painting the sleeping faces below in ghostly light. The house creaks, warm and alive, holding its people close. And there, in the quietest corner of the night, the heart of the Viking world beats on. Steady, smoky, and full of life. The first light doesn't rise fast here. It seeps. A faint silver glow spills over the snow-capped peaks and creeps down into the valley, turning the world from black to blue. Dawn in the north isn't loud. It's patient, a slow yawn of light that stretches across the fjord and gently wakes the world. Inside the Longhouse, it's still half dark. The fire has burned low, leaving only a few glowing embers, tiny red eyes watching the room. Sigrid is the first to stir. She always is. Long before the rooster even remembers his job, she's already pulling on her wool cloak, her hair tied in a quick, messy braid. She pokes at the coals with a stick until they flare, then adds a log. The fire sighs, catching its breath again. In that soft orange glow, she moves quietly, like someone who's done this 1,000 times before, and knows that mornings wait for no one. She sets a pot over the rekindled flame and scoops in oats. The sound is soft, a gentle hiss as water meets iron. The smell of porridge starts to mix with smoke, warm and familiar. Sigrid hums under her breath. Not quite a song, more like a habit, something to fill the silence before the day begins. Soon, there's movement behind her. Einar groans, always the same groan, half protest, half performance. He rolls from his fur pile like a bear crawling from hibernation. "Morning already?" he mumbles, rubbing his face. Sigrid smirks. The sun says so. "I told it to sleep in," he says, voice thick with sleep. "You tell the sun a lot of things. It never listens." He chuckles softly, pulls on his boots, and stretches until his back cracks like kindling. Another fine day to freeze. Outside, the world is waking up too. Einar steps out into the cold and instantly regrets it. The air slaps his face with icy enthusiasm. He mutters something unrepeatable under his breath and pulls his fur cloak tighter. The fjord lies before him, glassy and still, with the faintest shimmer of dawn brushing its surface. Far in the distance, the sea gulls call, sharp and lonely. Einar smiles. "You're up early too, you greedy thieves." He walks down to the shore, boots crunching on frost, and checks the fishing nets he set out yesterday. They hang stiff with ice, but there's movement beneath. Silver flashes, little miracles. "Ha!" he says, tugging the line. The god were kind. A moment later, one of the fish slips free and flops back into the water. Einar sighs. All right, half kind. Back in the Longhouse, the air grows thicker with the smell of breakfast. Sigrid stirs the porridge, occasionally giving it a glare, as if daring it to burn. The children shuffle from their beds, wrapped in furs like little cocoon trolls. Astrid blinks sleepily. "Is it morning?" "Mostly," Sigrid says. Leif yawns. "Did Papa bring the sun?" Sigrid smiles faintly. "He's trying." The kid's first job comes before food. Always. Leif pulls on his boots and heads to the small side stall where the goats are bleating impatiently. Their warm breath fogs the air, and the smell hits him. Strong, earthy, not exactly pleasant, but familiar. He pats one on the head. "All right, Hilda, you first." Astrid, dragging a wooden bucket behind her, follows to fetch water from a frozen stream nearby. She chips through the thin ice layer, fills the bucket, and trudges back carefully, trying not to spill. "Don't slip," Leif warns. "I won't." "You always do." "I don't always." She immediately slips, just a little. Water sloshes over her boots. Leif laughs, so hard he nearly drops his pail of milk. Astrid glares. "I meant to do that." By the time they return, the Longhouse feels alive again. The fire crackles brighter. The porridge bubbles thickly, and Einar drags his catch through the door, a few good fish dangling from the net. "Breakfast and dinner," he declares proudly. Sigrid raises an eyebrow. "You're sure it's not breakfast and bait?" He grins. "Depends who you ask." He sets the fish aside and sits down on a bench, stretching his hands toward the fire. His fingers are red and cracked, the skin tough from years of salt and wind. Sigrid quietly places a wooden bowl of porridge in front of him. "For the brave fisherman," she says dryly, "and his loyal crew," he nods toward the kids. "They can wait till their hands are clean." Astrid hides her milky fingers behind her back. They are cleanish. Everyone gathers near the hearth, the warmest part of the Longhouse, the place where every day begins and ends. They eat from wooden bowls, spoons clinking softly. It's not much, just oats, a drizzle of honey, and a bit of dried fruit. But in this world, it's gold. Food means strength. Strength means survival. And survival means everything. There's no chatter at first, just quiet chewing, the occasional sigh, and the sound of the fire breathing in and out. Then Einar breaks the silence. When the sun's higher, I'll mend the net and check the traps by the river. Sigrid nods. I'll work the loom today. Astrid can help card the wool. Astrid nods proudly, even though she's not entirely sure what that means. And Leif, Sigrid adds, you'll help your father. Leif grins. Even if it's cold? Especially because it's cold, she says. After breakfast, they move like clockwork, each person knowing what to do without needing to ask. Einar repairs tools, sharpening blades, and patching ropes. Sigrid spins wool into yarn, her hands a blur of motion. Leif gathers firewood. Astrid feeds the chickens, even though she's convinced they don't like her. The air outside is crisp, clean, and biting. Each breath feels like drinking snow. But under the pale morning sun, the fjord glitters, and somehow everything feels alive. That's the secret of Viking life. It wasn't grand adventure every day. It was this, the quiet rhythm of survival. The same motions, over and over, like the beating of a heart. The land didn't forgive laziness, and the sea didn't care for pride. But together, as a family, as a small unit against a big, cold world, they endured. And in those early hours, when smoke drifted from the roof and the light stretched across the snow, there was a kind of peace. Not comfort, peace. The kind that comes from knowing your place in the great, slow rhythm of things. As the morning settles fully over the fjord, Einar looks up at the pale sky. A few seagulls spiral overhead, screaming at each other about fish rights. He smiles, squinting into the light. Behind him, the Longhouse hums with life. The sound of spinning, scraping, bleating, laughing. It's messy, imperfect, and entirely beautiful. Einar takes a deep breath, the air sharp enough to sting his lungs. Then he nods, quietly, to no one in particular. Another good day to be alive, he says. And from the doorway, Sigrid answers, then don't waste it. And so, under the silver dawn of the north, another day begins. Not with glory, not with conquest, but with work, warmth, and the steady heartbeat of a family by the fjord. There's a certain kind of magic in the smell of food when it's the only warmth in a long, frozen day. Inside the Viking Longhouse, morning light slides through the smoke like honey, settling over wooden bowls and old hands grinding grain. You can almost taste the air, half ash, half barley, the kind of air that tells you someone's working hard to keep everyone fed. The heart of the home wasn't the bed or the fire pit. It was a hearth, the smoky, crackling center where meals were made and stories got told between stirring spoons and wooden mugs. You hear the steady scrape of stone on stone. That's Freydis, the mother of the house, turning dry barley into flour. She's done it so many times her arms just move on their own now. Her daughter sits beside her, sweeping stray bits back into the bowl. Every few minutes, Freydis leans close to blow away the husks. A puff of golden dust floats up, catching sunlight like glitter before it disappears into the smoke. That flour, that humble powder, will become the family's bread. Not soft white loaves like you find centuries later, but something dense, dark, and honest. Bread that tastes of effort and time. The dough is kneaded by hand, sometimes with bits of crushed nuts, seeds, or herbs if luck's been kind that week. Then it's flattened and laid on hot stones near the fire. No fancy oven, no timer. The smell slowly creeps through the Longhouse. Toasted grain with smoke and a little bit of salt from the sea air. The children start getting restless. They're hungry, but Freydis just grins and tells them to wait. Bread always tastes better when you've had to sit through its making. In the corner, hanging from wooden beams, are strips of fish drying, yesterday's catch. Salted, smoked, and strung up like ribbons. Cod, herring, maybe a bit of seal if the men got lucky. The father, Eric, takes a piece down and turns in his hands. It's stiff, almost like bark, but once softened in a stew or dipped in broth, it'll last through the cold months. Every strip of dried fish is a quiet insurance policy against hunger. And hunger, well, it's never far away in this part of the world. Even on good days, the North keeps you humble. One bad storm can ruin the nets. One early frost can kill your crops. So they make do, preserving everything they can. Turnips are buried in sand to keep them from freezing. Meat is hung in smokehouses for weeks. Even the broth from last night's stew gets saved and stretched into tomorrow's meal. Nothing is wasted, ever. But not every flavor is born from survival. Some are born from joy, from the small celebrations that break up the long, dark months. Take mead, for example. The Vikings love their mead sweet, golden, and strong enough to make even the quietest farmer start singing. It started simple. Honey mixed with water, left to ferment with wild yeast from the air. Nature does the rest. The barrel sits near the fire, bubbling softly like it's breathing. After a few weeks, it turns into liquid warmth, part drink, part courage, part comfort. On cold nights, Eric pours it into carved wooden cups, passing one to Freydis. They sip, cheeks glowing, while the children pretend not to watch, because they know sooner or later they'll be allowed just a little taste. The sweetness hits the tongue first, then the warmth creeps down the throat. It's not just a drink, it's a reminder that life still has flavor, even when the world outside is frozen stiff. There's a rhythm to these meals, an unspoken pattern that everyone knows. Morning is for porridge, thick, oat-heavy stuff stirred until your arm aches. Sometimes flavored with berries picked in summer and dried by hand. Midday, maybe a bit of cheese or leftover fish with flatbread. You eat standing up, quick and quiet, before heading back to the fields or to the sea. Dinner is the real event. The family gathers close to the fire. The stew pot sits in the center, simmering with vegetables, bone broth, and whatever bits of meat they've managed to save. Everyone eats from the same bowl, not because they have to, but because that's how it's done. The children go first, small hands clutching wooden spoons, slurping fast. Then the elders, then the rest. By the end, only the thickest part of the broth remains, and someone always ends up scooping it straight from the pot with a grin. Every meal tells a story, even if no one's speaking. The bread says, "We work hard today." The fish says, "The sea was kind to us." The mead says, "We're still alive to drink." And sometimes that's enough. Outside, the world howls, snow piling up against the Longhouse walls. Inside, laughter rolls between the beams. Someone tells a joke about a goat stealing the chieftain's boots, and everyone bursts out laughing, mostly because it's too cold to cry. Freydis shakes her head, but can't help smiling. Eric leans back, stretches his legs toward the fire, and hums an old tune, something about Odin's feast or Thor's hunger. The kind of song that's been sung 1,000 winters before and will be sung 1,000 more. It's easy to forget, watching them now, that these people are the same Vikings history remembers as raiders and warriors. Tonight, they're just a family, chasing warmth one meal at a time. Later, when the flames start to die and the embers glow low, Freydis tucks the last loaf of bread into a clay jar. She wraps it in cloth and hides it near the sleeping space, just in case tomorrow's weather turns cruel. Eric checks the smokehouse one more time, making sure the fire's still smoldering. The smell of salt and smoke follows him back inside. He sits by the hearth, pokes the fire, and watches sparks dance up to the roof hole, tiny stars escaping to meet the real ones. He smiles to himself, thinking of how strange it is that all the power and pride of their world still depends on simple things: fire, food, family. That's the truth behind every Viking legend. Before there were ships and raids and sagas, there was bread, meat, and the taste of sea salt. Tomorrow, they'll rise before dawn again, grind more grain, salt more fish, stir another pot. The routine never ends, and that's exactly what keeps them alive. Because here, under the northern lights, survival is a story. There's a quiet kind of power that doesn't shout. It doesn't swing a sword or sail a longship. It moves like smoke, steady, unseen, and absolutely everywhere. That's the power of the Viking woman. Inside the Longhouse, while the men haul nets or hammer iron, it's the matriarch who keeps the world turning. She doesn't just tend the fire. She owns it. Meet Freydis again, the heart and mind of this home. Her hair is streaked with gray, her hands rough from years of grinding grain and pulling wool. But when she walks through the Longhouse, even the dogs seem to move out of her way. You might think Viking life was all about the men, warriors, explorers, kings. But behind every saga of conquest was a woman who made sure the house didn't fall apart, while the men were busy trying to make legends. When Eric's gone for weeks on the sea, it's Freydis who decides what gets traded, what gets stored, and who eats what. She's not waiting for him. She's running the show. Those jingling keys at her belt, they're not decoration. They're a symbol, her authority made of iron. Each key opens something important. The food chest, the storage room, the family's wealth. No one touches those without her say-so. In a world where survival depends on planning, the one who controls the keys controls the fate of everyone under that roof. Freydis starts her day long before the first light crawls over Fjord. She walks barefoot across the cold floor, stirring the fire back to life. The children sleep close together, their breath fogging in the dim air. She checks the pantry, counts the sacks of barley, feels the weight of the salt jar. She knows exactly how long the winter will last just by how much food they've got left. Then she moves to the loom. Wooden beams creak as she sits down, feet pressing the treadles, fingers dancing over threads. The sound fills the room. Click, tap, swish. It's almost like the heartbeat of the house itself. Freydis weaves wool into cloth, but also order into chaos. Every line she weaves is a choice. Which color, which pattern, how thick or thin the thread should be. And it's not just clothing, it's currency. Cloth was wealth. A good weaver could trade her fabric for iron, honey, or even silver. So while men traded across oceans, women like Freydis traded across communities. Outside, a traveler arrives, a trader from a nearby village. His boots crunch in the snow as he enters, shaking off the cold. He bows his head respectfully because he knows who holds the real power here. Freydis greets him with calm eyes and a firm voice. She doesn't rush. She knows the rhythm of negotiation. He offers her a carved comb and a jar of imported salt. She studies them, turns them over, then disappears into the back room. When she returns, she's holding a folded piece of woven cloth, soft, thick, dyed with lichen to a deep earthy green. They exchange goods, a few nods, a few words. No men required. When he leaves, Freydis tucks the comb into her belt and moves on with her day, as if making a business deal before breakfast was just another chore. Which, honestly, it is. And here's the thing. Viking women weren't silent partners in their world. The law itself recognized their strength. Freydis owns this longhouse with Eric, not beneath him. If he were to die on a voyage, God forbid, she could inherit everything. The land, the livestock, even the trading rights. She could remarry if she wished, or not at all. Divorce? Perfectly legal and initiated by either side. If a husband mistreated his wife, she could walk out, take her dowry, and go back to her kin. No priest, no court, just her word, and the witnesses to back it. In many ways, Viking women had more autonomy than most of their medieval European neighbors. While queens and castles prayed for permission, women like Freydis made the rules at home. Evenings are when her power is most visible. The fire glows low, and everyone gathers close. Freydis sits in her high-backed chair near the hearth, the youngest child curled in her lap. She listens to men talk about storms, raids, politics, but when she finally speaks, everyone quiets down. Her words carry weight, not because she yells, but because she knows. She remembers the time the fjord froze early and half the village went hungry. She remembers who traded fairly and who didn't. Her wisdom isn't written in books. It's stored in memory, in scars, in choices made under pressure. Sometimes she tells old stories, tales of Freya, the goddess of love and battle, who wept tears of gold and rode into war. The children listen wide-eyed. Freydis smiles, knowing they need those stories. Because out here, faith and fire are what hold you together. And when things go wrong, when the goats get sick or a storm wrecks the roof, it's Freydis who decides what happens next. She doesn't panic. She tightens her shawl, gathers her sons, and starts fixing what can be fixed. That's leadership Viking style. No crown, no speeches. Just steady hands that know when to comfort, when to command, and when to carry on. Sometimes late at night, when the house is finally quiet and the snow outside glows under the northern lights, Freydis sits by the dying fire. She takes off her keys, lays them beside her, and watches the embers pulse. There's pride there and weariness too. She thinks of her mother, who held the same keys before her, and she wonders if her daughter will do the same someday. Not all power needs to be seen. Some power just needs to endure. The next morning, Eric will rise before dawn, strap on his boots, and head down to the boats. He'll kiss Freydis on the cheek, half in love, half in respect. "Keep the hearth warm," he'll say, and she'll smirk, handing him a small loaf wrapped in cloth. It already is. When he's gone, she turns back inside, keys clinking softly at her hip. The fire crackles, the loom waits, the Longhouse hums. Life continues under her watch. Because while sagas remember the warriors who sailed into glory, it's the women of the hearth who made sure there was still a home to come back to. There's a special kind of magic in a Viking childhood, half mud, half myth. You can almost hear in the laughter that echoes across the fjord, where little feet thump on frozen ground and wooden toy swords clash like the battles of gods. Morning light spills through the mist as the world stirs awake. Inside the Longhouse, the fire is low and warm, just enough to keep the chill from biting. Outside, the children are already up, because in this corner of the north, no one sleeps late. Take Little Leaf, the eldest son. He's about 10, but already built like a tiny ox. His father, Eric, lets him tag along to the boats, though mostly he just trips over the ropes. Still, Leaf walks with that serious face. The kind boys were when they think they're men. Eric shows him how to hold an oar, how to feel the pull of the tide. Row with the sea, not against it, he says, his voice deep and steady. The sea's got a temper, boy. Best learn to listen before you try to talk back. Leaf nods, pretending he understands, even though the oar nearly pulls him right off the bench. Eric laughs, shakes his head, and grabs him by the collar before he tumbles overboard. That's how Viking fathers taught. Half with words, half with the cold water waiting to teach the rest. Back at the Longhouse, Astrid, the middle child, is kneeling beside her mother Freydis, learning the rhythm of the loom. Her fingers aren't strong yet, but she's determined. The threads keep tangling, and every so often she lets out a little huff of frustration. Freydis watches quietly for a while before smiling. "You can't rush the threads," she says. "They know when your mind's elsewhere." Astrid squints at the strands. "They don't know anything." Freydis chuckles softly. "Oh, they do. They're like people. Pull too hard and they break. Be gentle and they fall into place." Astrid frowns, but a few minutes later, the pattern starts to form, uneven but proud. She glances up, and her mother nods with approval. "See?" The threads listen. Astrid grins, that small victory glowing like firelight on her face. Meanwhile, the youngest, little Bjorn, is supposed to be feeding the goats. Instead, he's building a fortress out of driftwood and mud. His goats are the soldiers, though one is currently chewing on a roof beam. "Bjorn!" his sister yells from the doorway. "They're invading!" he yells back, holding a stick like a spear. By the time Freydis finds him, Half the goats are wandering free. But she doesn't shout. She just sighs and shakes her head. Because, really, what's the point? Boys will always think they're saving the world when they're mostly just chasing goats. Afternoons belong to play. That's when the chores ease up, and even Freydis lets herself smile at chaos. Leif and Bjorn practice with wooden shields, clanging them together like seasoned warriors. Astrid gathers moss and berries with her friend Inga, pretending they're merchants from the south. The fjord reflects the sky like a mirror, and the children's laughter carries across it like birdsong. Sometimes Eric joins in, not to play, but to teach. He shows Leif how to carve runes into wood, explaining each symbol. This one, he says, tracing with his thumb, means strength, but not just in arms, in heart. Leif nods, eyes wide. Like you? Eric chuckles. No, boy, like your mother. Evenings are the heart of their little world. When the light fades and the snow glows faintly outside, the family gathers around the hearth. The air smells of smoke and stew. Freydis sits near the fire, spinning wool. Eric sharpens a knife. The children curl together on furs, listening. Tell us a story, Astrid says, her eyes already bright with anticipation. Eric glances at Freydis, who smiles. Go on then, she says. Make it a good one. So he begins, the same way his father once did. His voice drops low, slow like a drumbeat. Long ago, before the sun found its way into the sky, there was only ice and fire. And in between them, nothing, until the great giant Ymir rose from the frost. The children lean in closer, their faces flickering in the glow. Even Bjorn stopped squirming. The story twists and turns, giants, gods, the forging of the world. By the time the tale ends, the fire is burned low, and outside the aurora ripples across the sky. And that's the secret of Viking life. Not all raids and blood, but moments like this. A father's voice, a mother's smile, the warmth of family pressed close against the cold. The sagas we know today, many began right here, whispered by firelight into young ears that dream of the world beyond the fjord. For these children, every story was a lesson. Leif learns courage from Thor. Astrid learns wisdom from Freya. Bjorn learns, well, mostly that goats don't make good warriors. But they all grow up knowing one thing, that life, no matter how hard, is made bearable by love, laughter, and stories. Sometimes, on clear nights, Freydis takes them outside. They wrap themselves in cloaks and stand under the open sky. The northern lights ripple above, green, pink, and ghostly white. Are those the spirits? Astrid whispers. Freydis nods slowly. Some say they are the Valkyries riding through the sky, watching over the brave. Leif looks up, trying to spot them. Do they watch over us too? Freydis smiles, a soft glimmer in her eyes. If you live with courage and kindness, then yes, they always will. Bjorn tugs her sleeve. Even goats. Freydis laughs. Even goats, my love. As they head back inside, the world feels small but complete. Just one longhouse, one family, and the endless night sky above. The children fall asleep beside the hearth, the warmth on their faces, the story still echoing in their dreams. And outside, the fjord lies silent, the stars reflected in its dark surface. The sea hums quietly in the distance, like a lullaby for a land that knows both struggle and peace. Because for all the tales of kings and raiders, the true heart of the Viking world lived here, in the laughter of children, the patience of mothers, and the steady hands of fathers who taught them to listen to the wind. There's a special kind of music that doesn't need instruments. It's the rhythm of hands at work, steady, sure, patient. The Vikings knew the song well. Out here, where the wind howls and the sea roars, survival itself was an art form. Everything from a roof beam to a rivet was shaped, carved, hammered, and sung into being. The day begins not with words, but with sound. Clang, tap, scrape. The longhouse hums like a workshop waking up. Smoke curls through the air, sunlight cutting faint lines through it. Eric sits by the doorway, sharpening an axe head on a whetstone. Each motion is slow, circular, SHK, sparks flicking like tiny stars. The axe isn't just a tool, it's a friend. A Viking craftsman doesn't rush his work because steel remembers impatience. Listen, Eric tells his son Leif, handing him the blade. A good edge sings back to you. Leif presses a thumb to the metal. Not too hard, but enough to feel its bite. Feels alive, he says. Eric grins. It should. You wake the iron when you shape it right. That's no superstition. To the Vikings, every element had a spirit, even the metal in their hands. The forge wasn't just a place of labor. It was almost sacred. Inside, Freydis tends her own kind of craft. The quiet hum of the loom, the thread stretch taut, and the wooden frame creaks as she works. The shuttle slides through with a soft whisper, her feet pressing rhythm into the pedals. Each motion has its place, each pull of thread its purpose. The house fills with texture, the smell of wool, the thud of the hammer outside, the sizzle of iron on the anvil. Astrid sits nearby, spinning yarn, watching her mother's hands move in a pattern older than memory. Why do you always hum when you weave? She asks. Freydis smiles without stopping. Because cloth listens to music. The threads like company. Astrid giggles. Then I'll sing too. Her high, uneven voice joins her mother's low hum. Together. Their song threads through the Longhouse soft, human warmth against the cold stone silence outside. Out by the fjord, Eric's brother Halder works the forge. He's bare-armed despite the chill, sweat running down his back, his beard flecked with ash. He lifts a hammer and brings it down, clang. The sound sharp as thunder. The iron glows red, bending under his strikes, sparks scattering like fireflies. Keep your wrists loose, he shouts to Leif, who's holding the tongs. Leif nods, the heat prickling his face. The hammer falls again, and again, clang, 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 until rhythm takes over thought. That's a craftsman's song, not written, not taught. It's learned in muscle and memory, in the weight of the tool and the heat of the forge. Halder doesn't talk much while he works, but sometimes when a hammering pauses, he hums, low, deep, the kind of tune that rolls like thunder over hills. You hear that, he says, half to himself. Even the iron hums when it's near done. By midday, the Longhouse and yard are alive with creation. Freydis' loom beats steady. Halder's hammer rings. Leif sands down a plank meant for the boat. And somewhere in the corner, little Bjorn is carving something that vaguely resembles a dragon, or maybe a fish. Hard to tell. He holds up proudly. Look, Mama, a sea beast. Freydis peers at it, lips twitching. Ah, yes, a fierce creature of some kind. Bjorn beams, utterly pleased. It guard the goats. Freydis laughs. Then may the goats sleep easy tonight. Because here, every creation has meaning. Even a crooked carving or a rough spoon carries a story. For the Vikings, craftsmanship wasn't just about utility, it was devotion. A blacksmith could forge weapons that would outlive him. A carpenter could carve the dragon head that led a ship to glory. A weaver could clothe her family and wrap her love into every thread. Each piece carried the maker's spirit, a fragment of their care and pride. Archaeologists find their work centuries later. Brooches with animal shapes, runes carved into combs, wooden spoons with worn handles, all still whispering, "Someone made me with love." As the afternoon light fades, Eric joins Leif down by the water. They inspect the boat, their small family vessel, not for raiding, but for fishing and trade. The wood smells sweet, still new from the last repair. See these planks? Eric says, running a hand over the curved hull. Each one fits like bone to flesh. A ship's alive if you build her right. Leif tilts his head. Alive? Aye. She creaks when she's happy, groans when she's cold. If you listen long enough, you'll learn her moods. He knocks gently on the hull, and sure enough, the wood gives a low, hollow note, almost like a heartbeat. They work in silence for a while, hammering pegs, sealing cracks with pitch. The smell of pine tar fills the air, sharp, earthy, real. It's not glamorous work. But when it's done, Eric steps back, squints against the sunset, and smiles. "There," he says softly. "She'll carry us through another winter." Leaf grins. "Can we name her?" Eric nods. Every good ship needs a name." Leaf thinks hard. "How about Stormfriend?" Eric laughs, clapping his shoulder. "Stormfriend it is." And somewhere a gull cries, as if approving. That night, the house glows with warmth. The forge cools. The tools hang quiet, but the song of the day still lingers. Freydis finishes her weaving, drapes it over the beam to admire. The pattern tells a story: waves, mountains, stars. A map of the world as she imagines it. Eric runs a hand over it. "You've got the sea in your cloth," he says. Freydis smiles. "And you've got the land in your hands. Between us, we've made something that lasts." Outside, the northern wind sighs through pines. Inside, the fire crackles, the air thick with the scent of wood and iron and wool. For a moment, the whole world feels still, held together by human hands that never stop building, mending, and creating. Because that's what the Vikings truly did best. They turned the noise of life, the hammer, the loom, the chisel, into harmony. And in that harmony, they found something close to peace. The night comes early in the north. By the time the last smoke fades from the hearth, shadows have already settled across the fjord like a heavy wool cloak. Inside the Longhouse, the only light comes from the fire, orange tongues dancing, turning faces into shapes of gold and shadow. The day's noise has gone quiet. The hammer rests. The loom sleeps. And the family gathers close, their world shrinking to the circle of flame and story. Because for the Vikings, the gods didn't live in faraway heavens. They lived right here, in the crackle of the fire, the whisper of the wind, the creak of the timbers overhead. Freydis feeds another log into the flames, and the sparks rise like tiny spirits escaping. "Tell us a story," little Astrid says, eyes wide. "Tell the one about Thor and the giant again." Eric smiles. "Didn't we tell that last week?" Astrid shakes her head, though everyone knows she's lying. It sounds different every time. He chuckles, leans back, and lets his voice drop into that slow, deep rhythm, the kind of voice that makes the past feel close enough to touch. "Once," he begins, "when the sky still remembered how to speak, Thor and Loki journeyed to the land of the giants. Thor carried his hammer, Emdilnir, forged from lightning and rage, and Loki carried his tongue, sharp as any blade. The children leaned forward, eyes glowing like embers. The adults listened too, though they've heard the tale 100 times. It's not just a story. It's a thread tying them to who they are." Eric's voice rises and falls with the firelight, painting pictures in smoke. Thor's thunderous laughter rolling across the sky. Loki's sly grin gleaming in the shadows. The frost giants looming, as tall as mountains, their breath freezing rivers. And when Thor lifts his hammer, the whole room seems to pulse with its imagined weight. Then, crash! Eric slaps his knee, making everyone jump. Thor brought his hammer down, and the mountains split like bread. Laughter ripples through the room. Even old Halder smiles, though he pretends not to. Astrid claps her hands. "And then what happened?" Eric grins. "Then Loki said he'd done all the work, of course." They all laugh again. The fire pops and spits, as though joining in. But the night isn't only for laughter. As the story fades, Freydis takes a small wooden bowl and places it by the hearth, a few crumbs of bread, a splash of mead, offerings for the household spirits, the land tur, the unseen watchers who guard the home. "May they keep us safe through winter," she murmurs. The children fall quiet. Even the wind seems to hush at her words. Because to them, these aren't fairy tales. They are truth wrapped in story. The gods and spirits aren't distant beings. They breathe in every tree, every wave, every spark that leaps from the fire. Eric lowers his head. Odin, All-Father, he says softly, guide our hands and keep our kin. Freydis adds her own prayer. Freya, goddess of hearth and harvest, bless our stores and our strength. Then little Bjorn, barely 5 winters old, mumbles, and Thor, please don't break our roof if you get angry. The adults can't help but laugh, but Freydis squeezes his hand. I think he'll take that kindly, my heart. The flickering light dances on their faces, rough, weathered, gentle. The air smells of smoke and pine and roasted grain. Outside, the wind howls against the door, but inside, faith holds the world steady. These nights by the fire are more than warmth. They are ceremony, every tale told, every prayer whispered, every log laid upon the flame weaves the family tighter. Because in the Viking soul, there is no wall between the sacred and the ordinary. The plow, the sword, the storm, all serve the same gods. The same hands that men in net can lift in worship. The same fire that cooks their supper also burns as an altar flame. Later, when the children are half asleep, Halder begins to speak, his voice low, rough as gravel. My father used to say, he murmurs, that Odin walks among us on cold nights, wearing the shape of an old traveler. If your fire burns bright and your table is food, you'd best offer him a place. If you don tea, he lets the thought hang, eyes glinting in the shadows. Astrid pulls her blanket up to her chin. What happens if you don't? Halder smiles faintly. Then he takes the warmth with him. Freydis give him a look. You'll give them nightmares. But Eric just chuckles. Nightmares teach courage, too. Outside, the wind sighs again as if in reply. Somewhere an owl hoots. The fire burns lower. The Longhouse smells of smoke and sleep. Freydis hums an old tune, not a song for dancing, but a prayer and melody. It's the kind of sound that could have been heard 1,000 years ago, soft, wordless, ancient. The children drift off one by one, their dreams filled with gods who walk among men, with ships that sail across the stars. Eric stares into the embers, glowing, fading, glowing again. He imagines the old gods watching, not from far away, but from just beyond the light's edge, waiting, listening. He feels a quiet certainty that they're never alone. Not here, in the heart of the world, where man and God and story meet in the same breath of firelight. Outside, snow begins to fall. The roof creaks softly beneath its weight. Inside, the last flame flickers, curling smoke like a whispered prayer. The Longhouse sleeps, protected, blessed, and dreaming of gods who are not gone, only unseen. Because for the Vikings, faith was not in temples or altars. It was in the breath of the wind, the warmth of the hearth, and the stories that outlived every storm. And as the last ember fades, the silence feels almost holy, as if somewhere Odin himself has paused to listen. The sun barely rises now. When it does, it's more a pale ghost than a light, a shy circle hovering low over the frozen hills before disappearing again into the endless dusk. Winter has come to the fjord, not the pretty kind with glittering snowflakes and cozy fires, but the deep, bone-tired kind, the one that settles into your chest and stays there. Inside the Longhouse, the world has shrunk to a single glowing circle of warmth. Beyond the door lies white silence. Inside, smoke breath whispers and waiting. The family wakes slowly these days. No one hurries in the dark months. There's no field to till, no nets to cast through the ice. The sea is frozen near the shore, and even the goats look offended by the weather. Eric sits by the hearth, sharpening a blade that doesn't need sharpening, just something to keep his hands busy. Freydis stirs a thin stew, her breath fogging in the cold air. The children sleep under heavy furs, curled together like a litter of pups. Somewhere in the corner, the cow shifts in size, her warm breath a reminder that life still hums inside these timber walls. Outside, the wind howls like an old god forgotten. It shakes the roof, whistles through every crack. The snow piles higher, sealing them in. Feels like the whole world's gone quiet, Eric mutters, rubbing his palms together. Freydis glances up from her pot. It's not quiet, she says softly. It's listening. He gives her a look. To what? To see if we'll make it. Meals grow smaller. The stored fish is nearly gone. Grains being stretched thinner than honesty at a thing meeting. Freydis mixes dried herbs into the stew to make it seem heartier. But no one complains. In this land, complaining doesn't fill your belly. It only makes the cold bite harder. Instead, they talk. They tell stories, hum old songs, even argue sometimes just to feel alive. Halder insists the winters were harsher when he was young. Back then, he says, the ice could split a man's axe clean in two. Eric snorts. And you were probably tougher than the ice itself, eh? The old man grins through his beard. Aye, and twice as handsome. Laughter rolls through the smoke. For a moment, the Longhouse feels bigger, lighter, like the walls themselves are smiling. But laughter fades quickly in the deep cold. By midwinter, tempers begin to fray. The children squabble over small things, a missing comb, a place near the fire. Freydis snaps at Eric for tracking snow across the floor. He snaps back before realizing how foolish it sounds. Then there's silence. Heavy, guilty silence. She sighs and takes his hand. Forgive me, she murmurs. The dark makes fools of us. He squeezes her fingers. Then we're in good company. They share a tired smile. It's enough, because winter, more than anything, is a test not of strength, but of togetherness. Sometimes, when the storm eases, Eric steps outside. The world beyond the Longhouse feels otherworldly, still endless, and soft as ash. The fjord lies frozen under a skin of glass, and the trees creak like old ships moored in silence. He breathes an air so cold it burns, and for a heartbeat, he feels something close to peace. The kind that comes when there's nothing left to fight but the season itself. Above him, the sky ripples faintly with green, the northern lights, quiet and patient. They move like thoughts too big for words. He watches them, half believing their spirits, the ancestors keeping watch through the long night. Inside, Freydis keeps the hearth alive. That's her magic, not thunder or war, but fire that never dies. Every day she coaxes the flames, feeding them bits of wood, bits of faith. Without that warmth, the home would fall silent for good. Sometimes she hums while she works, old songs her mother taught her, the kind that sound like prayers, even when they're not. Astrid listens from her furs, whispering the words she knows. To her mother's voice is stronger than any god's. One night, when the wind is howling hardest, the door shudders and the fire flickers low. Everyone falls silent. A soft creak, then another. Halder grips his walking stick. Might be a traveler, he mutters, or something else. Eric moves the door, heart thudding. The latch is half frozen. It takes effort to lift. He cracks it open just enough to peer into the storm. Only darkness and snow. No figure. No voice. Then a faint sound. A branch snapping? Or a footstep. Probably a fox, he says finally, forcing a laugh. Or Loki himself stealing what's left of our stew. The joke breaks the tension. Freydis throws a handful of herbs into the fire, murmuring a blessing. If it's Loki, she says, let him clean the bowls when he's done. Days pass. Then weeks. The ice thickens, then begins to weep under its own weight. The sun lingers a little longer each morning, shy at first, then bold. When Astrid spots the first drip of meltwater falling from the roof, she shouts as if she's seen a miracle. Spring's coming, she cries. Spring. Freydis laughs, the first real laugh in months. Eric lifts her in his arms, spinning her once before setting her down again, dizzy and bright-eyed. For the first time in what feels like forever, the Longhouse smells not of smoke and despair, but of hope. That night, they gather again by the hearth. The fire burns higher, brighter, freer. Eric raises a cup of thin mead. To the gods who kept us, he says, and to the ones who stayed awake. when the world slept. Freydis nods. And to the fire, she adds. May it never go out. They drink. They eat what little they have left, not as survival, but as celebration. Outside, the wind has softened. Somewhere in the darkness, the ice cracks, not in warning, but in release. In the north, the winters never truly end. They only rest for a while, waiting their turn again. But each year, the Longhouse stands, scarred, smoked, stubborn, holding its people together through silence and storm. And maybe that's the true heart of Viking strength. Not the sword, not the ship, but the simple, stubborn fire that refuses to die, even when the world forgets the sun. When the ice finally loosens its grip on the world, it doesn't just melt, it sighs. The fjord breathes again, rippling with the first touch of wind in months. The snow retreats into the hills. The rivers start to sing, and the smell of earth, real wet earth, returns like an old friend. Freydis stands at the door of the Longhouse, hands on her hips, squinting toward the valley. Feels like the gods remembered us, she says, half smiling. Eric chuckles, shouldering a pack. Either that, or they got bored freezing us. For the first time in half a year, there's motion again, life spilling out into the world. The goats bleat, the children run barefoot over thawing mud, and Halder complains that his knees ache because the sun's gone mad. And down by the water, something stirs, the spring market. The market by the fjord isn't just a place to trade. It's a reunion, a celebration, and maybe a little bit of chaos. Every spring, people from nearby farms and distant villages make the same journey, following muddy trails, dragging sleds now turned into carts, and carrying goods wrapped in sealskin and cloth. By the time Eric's family reaches the shore, the quiet fjord is transformed. Longboats rest on the beach like sleeping beasts. Tents flap in the wind. Smoke from a dozen fires curls into the blue sky. The air hums with voices, laughter, haggling, greetings shouted across the crowd. And the smells, oh, the smells. Roasting fish, pine pitch, wet wool, honeymead warming in clay cups. It's messy, noisy, and alive. Freydis pulls her shawl tighter as she scans the market. Remember, she warns, don't trade away more than we can spare. Eric grins. I promise nothing. He's already eyeing a table stacked with small iron tools, the kind a man convinces himself he needs. Astrid tugs on her mother's sleeve. Can I see the beads? She asks, eyes bright. In the red tent? Freydis sighs. Fine, but stay close, and no touching unless you're paying with your soul. Astrid nods eagerly, already skipping ahead. Everywhere they walk, there's something to see. A trader from the east shows off bright silks that flutter like trapped fire. Another offers amber beads polished smooth by the sea. An old woman sells honey so thick and golden it looks like sunlight caught in a jar. A man from across the mountains boasts of iron nails strong enough to hold up Thor's beard. Eric tests one with his thumb and smirks. Feels more like Loki's toenail. The merchant laughs, clapping him on the back. Then may it be tricky and hard to bend. Barter here isn't just business, it's theater. A game of smiles, shrugs, and stories. Freydis trades a bundle of woven cloth for salt and smoked fish. Eric exchanges a small piece of ironwork, one of his winter creations, for a new whetstone and a jar of southern spices that smell suspiciously exotic. Even Halder gets in on it, swapping an old fur cloak for a flask of strong mead. For the knees, he explains solemnly. The merchant winks. And for the heart, maybe? Halder grins, showing what few teeth he has left. They ache the same way. Music drifts through the market. A bone flute here, a drum there, a singer calling out verses of some half-forgotten saga. Children chase each other between tents. Dogs bark, gulls scream, and someone keeps shouting about the finest combs in all the north. For a people used to silence and snow, this feels like paradise. Astrid returns to her mother, clutching a string of blue glass beads. Look, the man said they're from far away, from a place where sand shines like gold. Freydis runs her fingers over them, impressed despite herself. You traded the goat milk, didn't you? Astrid nods proudly. Well, Freydis sighs. At least you didn't sell your brother. Not all the traders are locals. Eric spots a man with darker skin, wearing a tunic of strange weave. His speech is rough, but the smile is friendly. On his table lies a small bronze figurine, a horse, detailed and perfect. Eastern work, the man says, from far beyond Miklagard. Eric whistles low. By Odin's beard, that's a long way to sail. The merchant nods, and a longer way back. They share a quiet moment. Two men from opposite ends of the world, both carrying their homes and their hearts more than on their backs. Eric ends up trading a small carved box for the horse. Not because he needs it, but because something about it feels right. When he hands it to Astrid later, he says, For luck! Every sailor needs a guardian. She smiles and tucks it into her pouch. As afternoon drifts toward evening, the market begins to soften. The fires burn lower. The laughter turns to song. Freydis sits with other women near the water's edge, sharing stories over mead. They talk of births and weddings, of hard winters and better ones to come. The sound of their voices mingles with the waves. Eric and Halder sit nearby, watching the sunset. The old man sighs. Strange, isn't it? All this trading and talking. And still, we're all just trying to make the same thing last another year. Eric nods. Aye, but I'll take noise and laughter over frost and silence any day. When darkness falls, the market glows with small fires scattered like stars across the shore. People dance, clumsy, joyous, their feet kicking up sparks. Someone passes around a drum, another a jug of honey wine. That's definitely stronger than it tastes. Astrid yawns, head on her mother's lap. Freydis strokes her hair, humming softly. The night hums with life, the kind that makes you forget how harsh the world can be. Before they leave, Freydis looks back at the market one last time. Tomorrow, the traders will sail away. The laughter will fade, and the fjord will return to its calm, empty silence. But for now, it feels like the heart of the world beats here, between the tents, between the people, between the songs. She takes Eric's hand. We did well, she says quietly. He nods. Aye, we always do. They start back toward home, the moonlight gleaming on the thawed path. Behind them, the fires burn low, and someone begins to sing, a tune that carries across the water like a memory that doesn't want to end. Because for all their storms, their raids, their gods, and their legends, it was here in places like this that the Vikings were most alive. Not on a ship, not in battle, but by the fjord, with family beside them, the promise of another season waiting in the wind. Spring settles in with the smell of salt and pine. The fjord, once locked in ice, now shimmers blue and alive. The gulls return first, their cries echoing off the cliffs like impatient heralds. Then come the men, mending sails, oiling shields, sharpening blades. And with them comes a familiar restlessness. Eric feels like a tug behind his ribs, that itch for the open water, the horizon, the unknown. He's stood on that shore 100 times, but it still gets him. Every spring, when the snow melts and the air fills with the scent of thawing earth, the sea starts whispering his name again. Freydis hears it too, though she pretends not to. The day before the voyage, the Longhouse feels heavier than usual. Freydis moves through it like she's memorizing every sound. The creak of the beams, the hiss of the hearth, the steady rhythm of her husband's steps. Astrid sits by the doorway, trying not to cry as she helps patch one of Eric's tunics. Her little fingers fumble with the needle. Don't look so glum, Eric says, crouching beside her. It's just the sea. I'll be back before the cows stop complaining about the midges. She sniffles. But what if the waves eat your boat? He grins, ruffling her hair. Then I'll tickle their bellies until they spit me out. Astrid giggles despite herself, and Freydis looks up from the fire, smiling faintly. That's the thing about departures in this land. Everyone laughs a little louder the night before, as if noise alone could scare off fate. At dusk, the family walks down to the shore. The tide rolls in slow, sighing against the stones. Eric's longboat sits ready, black tar gleaming, dragon head carved at the prow. Around them, other families gather, wives clutching cloaks tighter, children waving, men slapping shoulders and calling out blessings. It's not chaos, it's ritual, a farewell practice through generations. Freydis ties a small charm around Eric's wrist, a bit of woven thread in amber, blessed by her mother years ago. "Don't take it off," she says quietly. "Not until you're home again." He nods. "I never have." They stand there for a long time without speaking. The gulls cry overhead, the sails ripple in the wind. Then, finally, he kisses her forehead. "Keep the fire warm," he whispers. "Keep your head," she answers. When the men push off, the world seems to hold its breath. The oars dip into the water in perfect rhythm. Splash, pull, splash, like a heartbeat fading into the distance. The ships glide out, dark silhouettes against the gold edge of morning. Freydis watches until they vanish behind the headland. Only then does she exhale, the sound halfway between a sigh and a prayer. Days stretch thin after that. The sea has taken half the voices of the village, and the fjord feels emptier, too big, too quiet. Freydis keeps busy. That's the rule. You don't wait by the door, you wait by the work. She mends nets, tends goats, chops wood, and checks the roof for leaks that winter left behind. Astrid helps her grind grain, though she often pauses to stare toward the water. "Do you think they can see us from out there?" she asks one afternoon. Freydis smiles softly. "Maybe, if they close their eyes." At night, she tells her daughter stories, not of war or gods this time, but of calm seas and gentle winds. She weaves hope into every word, quiet and steady, because in this world, hope is a kind of work too. Meanwhile, the sea has its own story. Out beyond the fjord, Eric and his crew row through cold gray mornings, their breath mixing with mist. They trade at ports, barter furs for silver, and share fires with strangers whose languages sound like broken songs. Sometimes they fight, not grand battles, but quick, desperate scrambles. A chest of coins, a sack of salt, a barrel of mead. Nothing glorious, just survival dressed as adventure. And in the long, sleepless nights, when the waves slap the hull and the stars stare down like cold witnesses, Eric thinks of the Longhouse, the smell of smoke and honey, the warmth of Freydis' hand. He keeps the charm on his wrist, even when it gets soaked with seawater and grit. It reminds him of what he's rowing toward. Back home, summer comes slow. The hills turn green, bees hum around the heather, and the days stretch long enough that sleep feels optional. But in Freydis' chest, the waiting hums louder than the bees. Every creak of the door makes her turn. Every cry of gulls makes her step outside, shading her eyes toward the horizon. Sometimes she sees sails, but they belong to strangers. Sometimes she dreams of Eric returning, and wakes to find the fire burned low. Still, she doesn't lose faith. Not really. The sea may take, but it also gives. You just have to wait long enough. Then one morning, Astrid bursts in shouting, "Mama, sails! I see sails." Freydis runs to the shore, heart pounding. The air smells of salt and promise. They're far out on the glittering water. Dark shapes move. 1, 2, 3 longboats. She can't tell which is his yet, but her hands start to shake anyway. Villagers gather, shouting, laughing, some crying already. The boats glide closer, slow and steady. Sunlight flashes on wet shields. And then she sees it. Eric standing at the prow, sunburned, grinning like a fool, beard longer, eyes tired but alive. Freydis doesn't wave. She just stands there, smiling through tears, as if any sudden move might break the moment. That evening, the Longhouse fills with life again. The table creaks under food, smoked fish, bread, ale that's been waiting for a reason. The children climb all over Eric, demanding stories. He tells them about faraway ports, about a trader who rode a camel, like a furry horse that hates everyone, about silver coins that smell faintly of cinnamon. Freydis listens, half laughing, half silently counting the scars she doesn't remember. When the noise finally settles, she leans against him by the fire. "Was it worth it?" she asks softly. He looks into the flames for a long time. "I don't know," he says, "but it reminds me why I come back." Outside, the sea murmurs against the stones, whispering its eternal invitation. And though Freydis knows it will call him again next spring, knows she'll watch those sails vanish once more, she doesn't let the thought in tonight. Tonight, the family is whole. The hearth is warm. The fire dances like a promise kept. And somewhere beyond the waves, the sea waits patiently for its turn again. The sea keeps no promises, only patterns. Tides return, gulls circle, and the wind whispers to the fjord, always the same, always changing. It's been many weeks since the longboats disappeared beyond the horizon. The sound of oars still lingers in Freydis' mind, an echo that returns every time the waves lap against the stones. No letters come, no messages, just faith, the old kind, the kind that sits deep in your chest like an anchor. Life doesn't pause for absence. At dawn, Freydis still rises to stir the fire, shake the ash loose, and wake Astra for chores. The goats need milking, the sheep need checking, and the barley doesn't wait for longing hearts. The rhythm of work becomes a lullaby for loneliness. She tends the fields, her hands roughened from soil and salt, while the old men mend nets nearby, muttering stories of voyages past, ships that came home, and ships that didn't. Every tale begins the same way. He left with the spring tide, and every woman listening feels that quiet, heavy pause before the ending. The fjord is both friend and tormentor. Some evenings it glows soft and gold, so peaceful that Freydis feels foolish for ever fearing it. Other nights, it roars like a god scorned, waves smashing against the rocks as if to remind her who truly rules this land. When storms come, she lies awake, listening to the wind clawing at the roof. She can almost hear the voices of sailors out there, shouts, splashes, the ghostly creak of ships that may or may not still exist. Astrid sleeps beside her, clutching the amber charm her father once gave her. Freydis whispers old prayers into the dark, not to Odin or Thor, but to the nameless spirits that dwell between sea and sky. Please, she thinks, just bring them home. By midsummer, the women have become the spine of the settlement. The fields are green again, thanks to their hands. The animals fed, the fish dried, the children kept safe and scolded. Without the men, the village grows quieter but not weaker. The forge still burns. Old Brynhild, the blacksmith's widow, has taken it upon herself to keep it alive. Her hammer rings through the valley each morning, steady as a heartbeat. The loom sings too. Women gather in the Longhouse to weave cloth for the coming winter, their voices rising in gentle song. Stories and gossip travel from mouth to mouth, thin threads binding them together. There's laughter sometimes, even joy, but it's a softer kind, like sunlight through smoke. One evening, Freydis stands by the shore with Astrid. The girl is skipping stones, counting skips aloud. "Do you think he's watching us?" she asks, not looking up. "Maybe," Freydis says. "Maybe he's looking at a different shore and thinking of us doing this exact thing." Astrid smiles, squinting at the horizon. "Then I'll throw a big one, so he sees it." She picks up a round stone and hurls it as far as she can. It skips twice, then sinks. Freydis laughs quietly. "You'll knock over his ship at this rate." The girl beams, proud of the idea. It's a small moment, but in these days, small moments are everything. Sometimes the widows gather down by the beach at dusk. Not to talk, not really, just to sit, to listen to the sea, to share a silence that needs no words. Some of them have been waiting for years. Some have stopped waiting, but still come anyway. They bring bits of driftwood, shells, and smooth stones, setting them in little piles like offerings to the waves, to memory, to love that hasn't faded, only changed shape. Freydis doesn't call it prayer, but that's what it feels like. Summer rolls on. The air thickens with salt and pollen. One morning, the sky darkens without warning. Clouds boiling up from the west. A storm sweeps in fast, hurling rain sideways, thrashing the water into chaos. Freydis and Astrid run to pull the animals inside, shouting over the wind. The Longhouse creaks, smoke whipping through the roof hole. When it finally passes, the world is washed clean. The fjord lies flat again, gray and endless. Freydis steps out, soaked to the bone, and stares at the horizon. Her heart feels pulled in two. Part terrified that every storm is a grave, another part grateful that the sea is still there to wait with her. In the evenings, the Longhouse fills with talk again, not of raids or riches, but of ordinary victories. How the rye is holding strong this year. How little Hilda's goat finally gave milk. How the berries are ripening early. The elders tell the children tales to keep fear away. Not of gods this time, but of clever foxes and stubborn fishermen who outwitted storms. The laughter that follows isn't loud, but it's real. Even absence has its own kind of community. By the time autumn's first chill creeps into the nights, the rhythm of waiting has become part of life itself. Freydis no longer watches the horizon every day, not because she's lost hope, but because hope no longer needs watching. It lives quietly inside her, like the steady glow of coals beneath ash. She knows one day the sails will return, or they won't. Either way, she'll be here, keeping the fire alive, keeping the family story breathing. Astrid helps her close the shutters that evening. The sky burns orange over the fjord. When he comes back, the girl says, "I'll tell him I took care of the goats all by myself." Freydis smiles. He'll be proud. Then, after a pause, "And if he doesn't come back?" Astrid looks up. "Then I'll tell him anyway. In my dreams." Freydis kneels, brushing a strand of hair from her daughter's face. That's how the gods hear us too. That night, as she lies in the quiet Longhouse, Freydis listens to the waves. They rise and fall, steady and patient, as if keeping time for every heart that's ever waited. There's no message in them, no promise. But in their endless motion, there's something close, a reminder that life continues, even in silence. She closes her eyes, and for a moment, she imagines the sea whispering back. Not words, exactly, just the sound of belonging. It begins with the gulls, loud, restless, spinning over the fjord like they've sensed something the humans haven't yet. Freydis is kneeling by the shore, rinsing a net in the cold water. The morning is gray, soft, and ordinary. Nothing special about it. Until the birds cry louder. Then she sees them. Not the gulls. The shapes on the horizon. At first, it's just shadows on water, like driftwood or mirages. But then the sunlight catches on wet wood and bronze, long, narrow, moving shapes cutting through the mist. Ships. Her heart stops, then races. She blinks hard, thinking maybe it's a trick of light. But no, they're there. The longboats. The ravens have come home. The village stirs like it's waking from a long dream. Children shout. Dogs bark. Doors swing open. A wave of noise rolls across the settlement as people run down to beach. Freydis stands frozen for a moment, her hands trembling. Then she drops the net and starts running too, feet splashing through the shallows. The ships grow clearer with every heartbeat. The carved dragon heads on their prows gleam dark and wet. Their shields hung along the sides like tired scales. The sails are torn, patched, sun-bleached, but they're there. Home. Astrid races past her, shouting, "I see him. I see Father." Freydis' breath catches. She can't see faces yet, just silhouettes, tall, bearded, cloaked in sea spray. But her heart insists. He's there. The first longboat scrapes onto the stones. The sound, that heavy wooden sigh, feels like the end of a prayer. Men jump off, boots sinking into the mud. Some fall to their knees, kissing the earth. Others just stand there, silent, staring at the village as if trying to remember what home even looked like. Freydis pushes through crowd, her heart pounding so hard it hurts. Then she sees him, Ragnar. His beard is longer, streaked with gray now. There's a thin scar along his jaw she doesn't remember. He looks older, not just in years, but in weight. The kind carried in the eyes. For a moment, neither of them moves. The air between them feels fragile, like one wrong breath could break it. Then she steps forward. He exhales a small, broken laugh. That same half-smile she's seen 1,000 times, and opens his arms. Freydis runs into them, burying her face against his chest. He smells of salt and smoke and home. No grand words, no speeches, just silence and heartbeat. Astrid clings to him next, talking too fast, showing him how tall she's gotten, how she fed the goats, how she didn't even cry when the storms came. Ragnar listens, smiling through the exhaustion, one hand on her hair, the other gripping Freydis' arm like he's afraid to let go. Behind them, the rest of the village becomes a blur of reunion. Laughter, tears, names shouted across the shore. But also, in between, quieter moments, gaps where someone waits and no one steps off the boat. Those are the hardest to watch. A woman calling for her husband 3 times before she realizes he's not among them. A boy searching every ship for a father who will never return. The way silence grows heavy again, even in the middle of joy. Later, when the shouting fades and the fires burn low, the survivors sit around the Longhouse hearth. They speak in low voices, passing around cups of mead. The stories come out slowly, not of glory or riches, but of storms that swallow men whole, of strange coasts and narrow escapes. Ragnar tells only fragments. The sea froze their ropes, stiff one night. Another time, their oars splinter on reefs sharp as teeth. They saw lands with the sun barely set, where traders spoke in words that sounded like birdsong. Freydis listens, her fingers tracing the rim of her cup. She wants to ask if he was scared, if he ever thought of turning back. But the answer is already there in his eyes. Instead, she just says, "You came back?" He nods, tired but certain. A part of me almost didn't. Outside, the night settles soft and heavy over the fjord. The longboats rest pulled up on shore, their hulls glistening with salt and wear. Ravens perch along their masts, calling into the dark, the same birds that watched them leave months ago. The villagers say the birds guide sailors home, that they carry news between worlds. Freydis likes to think, maybe they do. She steps outside to feed the fire one last time. The sky glows faint green, faint threads of northern light, swaying like ghostly sails. Ragnar joins her, wrapping a cloak over her shoulders. His hands are rougher than before, callous and cold. "It feels strange," he murmurs, standing still again. She smiles faintly. "You'll get used to it." He looks out over the water. Some didn't make it. Good men. Brave ones. Freydis nods. "I know." A silence stretches between them. Not heavy, just full. The kind that doesn't need filling. Finally, she says, "You can tell me their names tomorrow. Tonight, just be home." He exhales slowly, pulling her closer. The fire crackles. The waves breathe against the stones, and the ravens above shift on their perches, feathers whispering like old stories. In the days that follow, the village moves with a new rhythm, reunion mixed with remembrance. The women mend sails and wash salt-stained clothes. The men help rebuild the docks. Children chase one another through grass, shouting sea stories they only half understand. There's laughter again, real laughter, not just a tired kind. But every smile carries a shadow. Every feast carries a toast to the one still at sea. Freydis catches Ragnar staring at the horizon sometimes, his hand twitching like it still wants an oar. "You leave again," she says one morning, half asking, half stating. He hesitates. "Not yet." "Good," she says simply, and hands him a wooden cup of warm milk. They both laugh softly. It's not the meat of victory, but somehow It tastes better. One evening, as the sun sinks low, a flock of ravens bursts into the sky, black shapes scattering over the fjord like ink. Freydis watches them from the shore, her hand resting lightly on Ragnar's arm. "They always come back," she says. "Or their kin do," he replies. She nods. "Same thing, isn't it?" He smiles faintly. "Aye, same thing." The tide comes in slow, brushing their boots. The sea sighs. And for once, for this brief golden evening, it feels like the world has given more than it's taken. Time, like the northern wind, never really stops. It just changes direction. Years have rolled across the fjord, one after another, like slow waves against the shore. The Longhouse still stands, though its timbers creak more now, its smoke hole patched and repatched by hands that once were small. The old fire pit still burns each morning, maybe not as fiercely, but steady, always steady. Freydis is gray now. Her back stoops a little when she walks, and her hands, once so quick and sure, have softened into a gentler rhythm. But her eyes? Still sharp, still watching the horizon, just like she always did. Ragnar's beard has turned silver, the kind that catches sunlight like frost. He laughs less loudly these days, but when he does, the sound fills the Longhouse just the same. Their daughter, Astrid, is grown. She's taller than Freydis now, stronger too, her voice confident, her stride full of quiet pride of someone who's seen both hardship and peace. She's taken to the fields each morning, tending the same patch of earth her mother once knelt upon. She knows which spots hold the fattest roots, which soil smells of rain, which stones hide warm from the sun. She sings while she works, softly, the kind of song her father used to hum while mending nets. And when she sings, the whole valley feels alive. Even the old birch trees seem to listen. Life moves in circles here, not straight lines. Children grow, goats multiply, harvests come and go. A new longhouse is being built not far from the first. Younger hands shaping wood, younger laughter filling the air. At night, when the chores are done and the fjord lies quiet, the family gathers around the fire, just like always. But now it's Astrid who tells the stories. She sits where her mother once sat, firelight painting gold across her face. The little ones, her nieces, nephews, maybe one or two of her own, lean close, wide-eyed and half-drowsy. She tells them of Thor's hammer and Loki's tricks, yes, but also of real stories, of storms survived, of the time their grandfather came home on a ship that looked ready to fall apart but didn't, and of their grandmother, who waited through the coldest winter the fjord ever saw and never stopped believing the tide would turn. Those are the stories that linger longest. Outside, the land changes in small ways. The trees grow thicker around the settlement. Moss creeps higher along the old stone fences. What was once open pasture now hums with new growth. Even the Longhouse seems to settle into the earth a bit more each season, as if it's becoming part of the land it once ruled. Travelers still come sometimes, traders, wanderers, a few wide-eyed young men heading for sea, chasing glory they've only heard about in sagas. They stop at the fjord, share a meal, and move on, but they always leave carrying a piece of something they can't quite name. Maybe a song, maybe a story, maybe just a memory of warmth and laughter that smelled faintly of smoke and sea salt. That's how legacies travel here, not in monuments or scrolls, but in the quiet things. One afternoon, Astrid finds her mother sitting outside by the shore, watching the water ripple. "Cold day," Astrid says, wrapping her shawl tighter. Freydis smiles. Cold days remind us we're alive. They sit together in silence, the kind that's comfortable, not empty. "You ever miss it?" Astrid asks softly. "The waiting? The sound of the ships?" Freydis hums a little, thinking. "Sometimes. But waiting was never just for ships, was it? We were waiting to see what kind of people we'd become." Astrid nods slowly. "And what did we become?" Freydis looks at her daughter, her strong hands, her steady gaze, and chuckles. The kind that doesn't need to wait anymore. Astrid laughs, brushing a stray lock of gray-streaked hair from her mother's face. "I'll take that," she says. As seasons pass, the village changes faces, but not spirit. New laughter echoes where old voices once did. The same chores, the same songs, the same stubborn strength. Ragnar spends his days teaching the boys to carve wood and mend nets. They call him AFI, grandfather, though half the time he pretends not to hear, so they'll shout it louder. When he works, his hands remember the sea, the way ropes felt wet and heavy, the rhythm of the oars. But now his craft is gentler. He carves toys, small boats, wooden animals, tiny gods that fit in a child's palm. Each piece carries something of him. A story, a smile, a seed. One evening, a storm rolls in from the west. Not wild, just steady rain tapping the roof like a lullaby. The fire crackles low. The family sits close, listening to sound. Freydis closes her eyes. She can almost hear echoes of old winters, voices long gone, footsteps of friends she once laughed with, the deep, endless hum of the fjord. "Tell us a story, Alma," one of the children whispers. Her eyes flutter open. She smiles. "What kind of story?" "The one about the waiting," the child says. Freydis nods slowly. "Ah, yes, the waiting." And so she begins again, her voice soft, calm, and full of memory. The others lean in. Even the storm outside seems to hush, listening. She speaks of love that stretched across seasons, of faith strong enough to outlast storms, of how sometimes the bravest thing a person can do is stay. When she finishes, the room is quiet. The firelight dances across their faces, and for a moment, it feels as though every ancestor who ever sat by a fire is sitting with them now, unseen but present. By morning, the storm has passed. The sky is pale and clear. Ragnar is already outside, watching the mist lift off the fjord. He holds a small carving in his hand, a simple bird, wings spread. He sets it down on a stone and whispers something no one hears. Then he turns back toward the Longhouse, toward warmth, toward life. Inside, Astrid is already humming, her voice weaving to the smell of baking bread. The children chase one another between the benches, laughing. Freydis stirs the pot by the fire, smiling softly. Life continues, not in the roar of battle or the crash of waves, but in these quiet, steady moments. This is how empires are built. She thinks, not with swords, but with stories. And stories, once planted, never truly die. They grow, like seeds scattered on the wind, into everything that comes after. The night returns to where we began. The fjord, quiet and silver beneath the glow of the northern lights. The world exhales. The sea is calm again, like it remembers every name ever whispered into it. Smoke drifts lazily from a few turf-roof homes that still cling to the shoreline, their timbers worn smooth by wind and time. It's centuries later now, but somehow nothing truly feels gone. The same stars still shimmer above, the same icy breath curls along the water, and if you listen close enough, really close, you might still hear the laughter chilled in the wind, the crackle of an old hearth fire, and the slow heartbeat of the north itself. Generations have passed since that first Viking family built their longhouse here. Their stories, the ones told by the firelight, whisper between chores, sung on the oars of ship, drifted forward through time, passing from tongue to tongue like warm bread passed around a table. The father who once fished the fjord now lies beneath the mossy earth, his tools rusted beside him. His wife, the matriarch, keeper of keys and keeper of peace, rests beside him, her spirit maybe still checking if the fire's been put out properly. Their children grew, lived, and loved. Some stayed by the sea. Some ventured across waters so wide that even the gods might have blinked. Their descendants built new homes, new names, new stories, but always carried a piece of that longhouse warmed inside them. The fjord is quiet tonight. A single longhouse remains, smaller than before, but still alive with light. Inside, a woman hums while braiding her daughter's hair. The tune is old, far older than she knows. Her husband sharpens a fishing knife near the doorway, its rhythm matching the sound of waves outside. It's all so familiar. The same chores, the same hopes. The only difference is the century. The child asks, "Mama, where do the lights come from?" And her mother smiles softly, tilting her head toward the dancing sky. "They're the spirits," she says, "those who came before us, watching over the fjord." The little girl squints, as if trying to spot her ancestors up there. The fisherman, the weaver, the craftsman, the dreamers. And maybe in a strange way, they are there. Because memory never really dies in places like this. It lingers in the soil and the sea, in the smell of smoke that clings to every winter night. Step outside for a moment. You'd see the aurora swaying, soft greens and blues rippling like silk across the heavens. The water below mirrors it, turning the fjord into a slow-moving river of stars. This was always the heart of it all. Not the raids, not the wars, not the legends carved in sagas, but this quiet beauty, this small, ordinary eternity of family, home, and hearth. 1,000 stories told by the fire. 1,000 hands working, mending, feeding, loving. That's what really built the North. Somewhere in the distance, a raven lands on a weathered wooden post. Its feathers glisten under the aurora, just for a second before it takes off again, disappearing into the dark. Old Norse folk once believed ravens carried messages between worlds. Maybe this one just came to check in, to remind us that the past still breathes softly in every gust of wind. And as the waves lap gently against the shore, you can almost imagine that first family again, sitting by their fire, watching the same lights, dreaming of the same tomorrow. Empires forget, but families remember. It's true, the great halls of kings crumble. The names of conquerors fade from stone. But the songs sung at the hearth, those stay. They echo in lullabies and traditions, in the way we hold our loved ones close on cold nights. The Viking age might have ended 1,000 years ago, but its heartbeat never stopped. It just slowed, settling into the rhythm of home life, of tending, waiting, and surviving. Every handmade bowl, every woven cloth, every story told by candlelight was its own act of defiance against time. A quiet promise that life, no matter how harsh the world becomes, will go on. The wind picks up again, carrying with it the scent of pine and salt. Somewhere inside the Longhouse, a fire crackles, shadows dance, and someone laughs. It's small, but it's everything, because this is how civilizations truly endure. Not through conquest, but through care. Not through glory, but through love, the slow, daily kind that warms bones and builds legacies. Centuries will pass again. The fjord will freeze and thaw. The Longhouse will crumble, and new homes will rise where old ones once stood. But if you stand here under the northern lights, you might still feel them. All those lives layered across time like rings in an ancient tree. And in that quiet glow, you realize something simple but enormous. History is made of battles and kings. It's made of families who kept the fire burning. Good night to the ones who built the North. Good night to the Longhouse, to the fjord, to the fire. May your stories drift with the lights forever. The waves hush against the shore. The world turns to stillness. And beneath the northern lights, the story sleeps once more, warm, peaceful, and eternal.